As radical Republicans across the country increase their escalatory and incendiary rhetoric, one Congresswoman in particular, Marjorie Taylor Greene, is openly advocating for states to secede from the Union. But before we unpack all that, if you haven't yet, please hit that like, subscribe, and the alert bell. Maybe check out my Patreon. I'd appreciate the support. All right, folks, there's no two ways about it. At least one sitting congressperson, a person who was elected by her constituents, somebody who wields formal official state power, is a very influential member of the Republican Party. Many people would say the de facto Speaker of the House, given her close association with Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy, as well as Donald Trump. Marjorie Taylor Greene is openly advocating for secession. Okay, she is basically offering a Confederate apologetic. She is basically saying that she is indeed a living neo-Confederate, which shouldn't be too surprising. Of course, this is ironic that this occurs on the anniversary of the September 11th attacks, when you would think that somebody in the party of patriotism, like the Republican Party, would be trying to reinforce the solidarity and patriotism of the Union. Instead, she's saying that we should fracture the Union, as Southerners attempted to do in the Civil War. She says, if the Biden administration refuses to stop the invasion of cartel-led human and drug trafficking into our country, states should consider seceding from the Union. From Texas to New York City, every town in America, we are drowning from Biden's traitorous America Last border policies. Now, as we've discussed in previous videos, for better or worse, and I would actually argue for the most part worse, although there have been some gains, but President Biden's border policies and Donald Trump's border policies are effectively the same. It's just simply true. Border funding under President Biden is identical to what it was under Donald Trump. Manpower at the border is virtually the same as it was under Donald Trump. Even Title 42, until it was finally revoked, was enforced by President Biden. It's virtually identical. Now, what's inconvenient for Marjorie Taylor Greene is that border crossings, illegal border crossings, are still down compared to where they were. This was, I think, back in August. Illegal crossings on the U.S.-Mexico border rose in July, but are still down from last year. So in June in particular, there was a spread when border crossings were virtually cut in half. They rose somewhat in July, but are still down overall. Now, that's under Joe Biden. So I'm not exactly sure what Marjorie Taylor Greene is talking about. It's like, okay, well, the policies and manpower and resources are virtually identical. President Biden's administration has been more humane, so to speak, than Donald Trump, although that's a relatively low bar. Maybe what she's thinking of are the Rio Grande borders or barriers that Republican Governor Greg Abbott put up in Texas. Buoys wrapped in razor wire, issuing instructions to border agents under Texas authority to push people back into the Rio Grande. Maybe that's what she's talking about. Now, there's an ongoing legal feud right now between the Biden administration and Texas. A federal judge said that Abbott needed to remove these incredibly inhumane and dangerous razor-wrap buoys. And then a day later, a conservative appeals court said, no, actually, we're gonna put a stay on that. They can remain. So there's an ongoing back and forth about that. That's what I expect Marjorie Taylor Greene's actually talking about. Biden's not cruel enough. The Biden administration needs to match the cruelties of the Trump administration, or perhaps go further. Now, as far as secession goes, I just want to say it's illegal, right? Everybody who knows anything about the Civil War should understand that settled the question about whether or not it was legal for states to secede from the Union. But if there's any doubt, there was also a Supreme Court case in the aftermath of the the Civil War about 4 years later. In the 1869 case, Texas v. White, the court held that individual states could not unilaterally secede from the Union, and that acts of the insurgent Texas legislature, even if ratified by a majority of Texans, were absolutely null. When Texas entered the Union, she entered into an indissoluble relation. Chief Justice Salmon Chase wrote for the court, all the obligations of perpetual union, all the guarantees of Republican government union attached at once to the state. The act which consummated her admission into the Union was something more than a compact. It was the incorporation of a new member into the political body, and it was final. The union between Texas and the other states was as complete, as perpetual, and as indissoluble as the union between the original states. There's no place for reconsideration or revocation except through revolution or through consent of the states, meaning that all the other states would have to agree to let Texas go. So again, this is the anniversary of September 11th, 22 years ago. We saw a terrorist attack against the United States, and we saw in the aftermath the country come together in a way, in the sense of patriotism against an external foe. And here, 22 years later, on the very same day, we have a sitting Republican congresswoman actually advocating for the fracturing of the United States. It's a grotesque irony, and further proof that, again, that the Republican Party really isn't the party. The military's not the party of veterans, not the party of patriotism. It's really not. And there's probably a good opportunity for those of us on the left, without taking it to the cultish lengths that, conservatives tried to actually reclaim patriotism. Perhaps true patriotism is, being willing to criticize your country and demand that it do better when the situation calls for it, but also not advocating for the country to be splintered and fractured simply because you think that the border policies are not racist or cruel enough. So anyway, I think Democrats and the left, I think we should reclaim the mantle of patriotism from the Republican Party because they clearly have not earned it and they don't deserve it.